Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, wherever you may be dialing in from across the world. Thank you very much for joining us today on our Oxford Strategic Marketing webinar, The Best Marketing Leaders Drive Strategy, True or False? We'll be addressing a number of areas around this question today and giving you some more details about our work in marketing and the Future of Marketing Initiative and the Oxford Strategic Marketing Programme. We're very privileged today to have Professor Andrew Stephen, L'Oreal Professor of Marketing at the Saïd Business School, presenting for us. And I believe Andrew will be taking some questions towards the end of the webinar today. So if you'd like to submit any, please do put them into the question dialog box, which you'll see in your control panel on the right-hand side of your webinar interface. Yes, we will, without further ado, move on and begin the presentation. And we hope that you enjoy the content. Thank you very much.
All right, hello everybody. I'm Andrew Stephen. I'm a marketing professor here at the Saïd Business School at the University of Oxford. Thanks for taking some time out of your day to attend this webinar. We're going to talk about a few things today, and we've got this provocative question, I suppose, is the title. Of course, the answer is it depends. I think broadly speaking, it should be true that the best marketing leaders drive strategy, but that's not always the case in practice. And so, talk about that and then talk about some other things that we're doing in relation to these types of questions here at the Saïd Business School as part of our marketing program. So formally, we'll talk about this notion of marketing and its role in broader strategy. And that's really, really important because marketing as a function, if you think of marketing on the org chart, tends to sometimes get sidelined or be a bit siloed, but more broadly in a strategic sense, marketing plays a really, really fundamental and cross-cutting role inside organizations. And the best performing organizations embrace marketing through that lens. And so we're going to talk about that and then distill that into three fundamental questions, I think, you may ask yourself as you're thinking about preparing yourself for value-driving strategic marketing for the future in an organization. And then lastly, we'll talk about Oxford and particularly Oxford's Strategic Marketing Program, which is a program we run that brings together a lot of these concepts to help leaders in their organizations really help deal with big challenges facing them from a marketing perspective. So let's kick it off. I think marketing drives strategy. And this slide is really maybe a biased view of marketing coming from a person who is a marketing professor, but I really do think that marketing sits in the middle of all these other things. If you think about it, what's marketing? Well, marketing is really fundamentally about customers. You need customers to have a business, and all of these other aspects of business are important, but a customer-centric view of the world, which is really a marketing mindset, is fundamentally important. And I think it's the glue that holds things together in an organization. The other thing that's really important from a marketing standpoint is it gives you your true north, or it should. If you think about your customers, who they are, what you want them to be, what they want from you, what your brand is, what's the bedrock upon which your brand is built, that starts to show you the way forward. That really tells you where your North Star is. And I think there's real strategic value in bringing organizations together internally and externally once you figure it out in terms of who are we, what do we stand for, what's our purpose. And these things are usually marketing related questions. They should be, and marketing should be driving the strategy in that space, because otherwise, who's going to drive it? It's going to be driven by other needs or other purposes, which may well be important, but at the end of the day, the growth of a business is going to depend fundamentally on its customers, finding new customers as well as enhancing the value of existing ones and growing through that. But to do that, you need to know who you are and what you stand for, and they need to know who you are and what you stand for. So I think a marketing-driven approach is strategically imperative because it really points you in the right direction. It gives you your north. in particular if we think about where the world is headed. So it's not just for now, and in fact, I think thinking about now is perhaps completely irrelevant. Thinking about the future is really where we need to be focused. Growth comes in the future. Growth doesn't happen in the past. And even if you've enjoyed wonderful growth of a business in the past, that does not mean it's going to happen in the future. And we've all seen that, and you've probably seen that in your daily lives, in your organizations, throughout your careers. So we need a sense of purpose. We need to know where we're headed. We need to know who we are, what we stand for, what our values are, because that matters in the mind of the customer. But actually, it's really forward-looking. It's where are we going? Where are we headed, and how on earth do we get there? And that's frankly what strategy is all about. But if we're thinking about those fundamental strategic questions from a marketing standpoint, we're thinking about it in light of our customers and other assets that we have that help us market great products and services and generate value. So I think there's a strong strategic imperative there, but it's a very future-oriented, forward-looking perspective. So if we think about the future, 3 fundamental questions, and you could probably have 30 fundamental questions, but I think you need to start somewhere. And these are the 3, and we'll go through each of them in order, and I'll offer you some views on this. But if we start with the first one, who is my customer of the future? I think a really important realization for any company, whether you're selling gravel to construction companies who make roads, or you're selling lipstick to teenagers, or you're selling digital products and services, whatever it might be that you're in the business of, you need to be looking to the future. And I think the first fundamental is thinking about who's the customer of the future. And this is not just thinking about, well, we've got these customers right now. We sort of think our product or service fits them really well. They love us, so it's going to be them. Well, maybe not. We've seen plenty of examples of disruption in industries where a perfectly good business is eroded, if not obliterated, because new entrants from completely out of left field have come in and disrupted. And plenty of industries are examples of that. If you think of the taxi industry with Uber, you have hotels with Airbnb, and so on and so forth. There's classic tales of disruption. But if you just thought your customer today is going to be your customer tomorrow, that may not really be a safe bet. So in an uncertain world where there's a lot of disruption, think about who the customer is of the future, and therefore where there might be opportunities to find new customers, or to deliver new types or sources of value to your existing customers to sort of morph the nature of that relationship. I think that's a strategically difficult question, but it really gets at the heart of survival. The second fundamental question that I would ask myself is, what do these customers of the future expect from me? And sort of related to that, what are the other influences on them in the marketplace? And so there's a concept I call expectation spillovers, which I think is really, really, really important, but we often forget about it once we get caught up in our own organizations and industries. And it's a really simple premise. If Amazon can deliver something to you, within 2 hours, let's say, in a large city, if you have sort of a Prime Now delivery service or that type of thing, or get you whatever product you want pretty much tomorrow morning in lots of parts of the world, if Amazon can do that, why can't I expect that sort of level of fast turnaround from every other company that I deal with? Why can't I expect my bank to reissue my credit card after I lost it when I was traveling, also within a couple of hours, for example? And so if there are players in the marketplace, but not in your industry, who are influencing the expectations that your customers have around things like service, speed of turnaround, quality of service, friendliness of service, responsiveness, the ease of use of technology and platforms and apps and those sorts of things, you need to worry about that, because these are the sorts of expectations that the customer of your future will have, because these expectations spill over from one industry to the next, because customers are human beings who lead lives, and so they don't just sort of compartmentalize themselves when they're dealing with a company in a certain product category. So think about that. It makes marketing a lot more complex, but if you really want to understand your customer so that you can be future oriented for those future customers, you need to challenge yourself to really think about where their expectations are going to come from. And it might not be the obvious places, but you need to start thinking about that. And the third one is, having said these things, where do I invest? How do I get ready for this future today? How do I allocate my budgets? Where do I spend my money? Is it just sort of the same old thing, but take last year's budget allocation and change it around a little bit, up at a few percentage points or down a few percentage points, depending on how generous the CFO has been this year, and kind of keep on keeping on? Or do you have to ask yourself some difficult questions? What aren't you investing in from a marketing and customer focused standpoint that you should be investing in? Is it new resources, new technology? Is it experimenting with different ways of engaging those customers? Is it investing in more deeper insights? Is it new products, new service options? Is it investing in taking a step back to think about these sorts of things more deeply? So more strategic type approaches. Whatever it might be, to prepare yourself for the future customer and for their future expectations, investments need to be made, and difficult decisions need to be made around those investments also. And this is not just sort of how do you invest a media budget. This is much broader and strategic than that. But these are complex decisions, and they involve making important trade-offs. But they're challenges nonetheless that need to be faced. So I think as we embrace the future of marketing, as we think about how to grow businesses through a marketing mindset and through delivering even more superior value to our customers, if we're thinking about the future, we need to think about these fundamental questions and start to get a handle on answering them. And these are the sorts of questions that leading organizations are asking themselves as they reinvent the way that they do business in a disruptive and often challenging market environment. Taking that step back to ask the tough questions it really is an imperative for ultimate strategic success. So, having said that, I'll share a little bit about what we do at Oxford around these types of issues and these sorts of challenges. Because we're a business school in one of the world's oldest and most well-known and well-respected universities. I think the most recent ranking of universities that I read ranked Oxford as the world's #1 university for knowledge generation and research. And we're Oxford's business school. Although Oxford's been around about 800 years, we're a business school that's been around about 21 years. So we're relatively junior entrant in the Oxford landscape. But what we do is really take the knowledge, the research-led insights that help solve challenges in the world and in various industries, and turn them into programs. And what we teach in our classrooms, and what we offer our participants who come and do executive education programs, for example. And so everything I've just talked about from sort of a strategic perspective on marketing and thinking about the future are exactly the sorts of questions that we grapple with when participants come on our programs, whether that's in an MBA type program or what I am going to talk more about in executive education. The other thing we do is we do this in partnership with organizations that are facing these problems. They don't have the answers, but they're willing to admit they don't have the answers, but they want to find out. And so within marketing here at Oxford, we created the Oxford Future of Marketing Initiative a little over a year ago, which brings together academics here at Oxford, as well as world-leading organizations, to really figure it out. What is going to influence and matter for the future of marketing? And how could we shape that future of marketing as well with research-related activities? And these are world-leading organizations that are part of this initiative. And here's a list of some of the current partners that inform the sorts of things that we do here at the school from a research and a program standpoint. Some household names there, as well as some companies that maybe not household names, but are very important, say, in the ad tech world or the marketing technology landscape, or the data landscape more broadly. But collectively, these companies inform our curriculum, they inform our research, and we collaborate together to help shape the future of marketing and to understand this fast-changing, uncertain yet very interesting and I think exciting landscape in which we are now situated. So the Future of Marketing Initiative is something that powers a lot of what we do here at Oxford and helps us address these big challenges, these big questions. So speaking of questions, just a little reminder, please make sure you submit questions if you have some in the dialog box, because we'll get to the Q&A part of this webinar shortly. Indeed, I wanted to kind of whet your appetite, I suppose, or provoke some thought with some of the things I was saying before around the fundamental questions and perspectives on marketing's role. But really, I think the Q&A is the more interesting part of any webinar that I've ever facilitated or indeed listened to. So keep those questions coming in, and we'll get to them shortly. Before that, though, I wanted to just briefly talk about sort of the third thing, which is the strategic marketing program that we offer here at the school. And indeed, you may be attending this webinar because you're interested in this program. So I wanted to touch on this briefly and invite you to reach out to us if you have more questions or would love to know more about the program. And indeed, you'll get a follow-up email after this webinar with some links to some information. This is a program that we run in Oxford for people who are thinking about the challenges that they face from a marketing perspective. So that sometimes is going to mean marketing leaders, so heads of marketing, marketing directors, those sorts of people in organizations. But just as easily could be people who are not marketers, but who are needing that marketing perspective that is very future oriented, because maybe they work with marketing or they oversee marketing in some other way, or because perhaps they're an entrepreneur who has to do everything and has to play every role and wear every hat. So this is a program designed for a wide variety of participant types, and it's very much a future focused program. So we take a different perspective on this sort of thing here at Oxford. So it's a week-long program, and we talk about big challenges that you face that are marketing related. That might be about customers. It might be, where do I find my next however many customers, my next million customers, my next billion customers, perhaps, if you're a really big organization. Or maybe, where do I find my first customer? Or my first 100 customers if you're an entrepreneurial organization that's just getting on your feet. But we do this by thinking about what I call market-based assets or marketing assets. Customers are obviously going to be one of them. The brands or the reputation of your organization, your values, what you stand for, is going to be part of it. But then things like content and your channels through which you disseminate not just product and service, but also content and information. Data and insights are big assets if collected and appropriated successfully. And then the fifth one, the sort of fifth pillar of marketing assets that we talk about, which is often not talked about in a marketing context, but I think is about as important as anything else, is talent and skills and also leadership from a development standpoint. Most organizations are fundamentally people organizations. And if you don't think about how to serve your customers better, create better products, deliver more value through services, build great brands, and grow business that way, if you don't think about those things also in light of how do I make it work for my people, my talent, how do I get the right people, how do I motivate them, how do I empower them successfully, it's all going to fall apart. So that is very, very much an important part of marketing, that sort of talent and leadership aspect. And so across the 5 days, we start by sort of, come with your dirty laundry, if you will, or your baggage. What are your challenges? And sometimes people are optimistic and see these as opportunities, but most of the time, participants arrive on the Monday, and we fill multiple walls worth of whiteboards with lists of big problems and challenges that they face in their organizations, and in their industries, perhaps more widely, as a starting point. Sort of get on the table, what are we talking about here? And then we start to tie that together and identify some key themes. And then we move throughout the program and sort of building up content around these assets. So we take a deeper dive into customers, again, thinking about the future customer in particular, and how we would understand them. So sort of the first 2 questions of the 3 fundamental questions I posed earlier. We talk a lot about technology on this program. I think it's fair to say that marketing practice is now a heavily technology-enabled and data-driven field. Not to say that creativity and great ideas are unimportant, they're probably even more important, but technology is massive in this space now. And so a lot of this program is devoted to thinking about new technologies in marketing as they relate to brands and how marketing gets done, but also as they relate to customers and consumers in their day-to-day lives. So AI is an important topic that we talk about a lot. But AI meets marketing, and when we think about things like programmatic buying and automation and precision targeting in the digital advertising space, as an example, it's a really important topic, and it's something that maybe people aren't willing to admit they don't fully understand, but it is an area where we see at least a lot of hype, and we want to try and cut through that with proper understanding of a technology or a set of technologies like AI. The use of other technologies, like blockchain, for example, or thinking about more consumer tech. So things like augmented reality, virtual reality, voice-operated devices. So things like Amazon Echo with Alexa, or Siri on Apple's devices, or Google Home. All of these AI-powered, voice-controlled assistants have marketing implications, and senior marketing leaders that I talk to are all asking, well, what do we do about voice? Is it just another interface, or is it going to change the way consumers interact with brands? So we grapple with those sorts of questions when we think about technology as a strategic enabler, and so on. So tech is really at the heart of the way we think about this, because it's at the heart of the disruption of marketing practice as we see it these days. And then the rest of the program moves more into what I would call sort of being able to articulate your strategy for moving forward into the future, and how do you orchestrate that and pull that off. So we talk about organizing for excellence, perhaps restructuring things, shifting the org chart around, maybe to create more agile marketing organizations within firms that can therefore be more successful and performance-oriented. We talk a lot about leadership, and how do you lead through change and disruption in this marketing context. And then, of course, we pull it all together and help you develop action plans. So it's quite a comprehensive program, very much focused on the future of marketing, very much focused really on the future of business, where those topics that we cover are fundamentally rooted in thinking about the different assets you could cultivate from a marketing standpoint in an organization to grow and be successful, but are rooted in understanding of where the world is headed, and working with our Future of Marketing Initiative partners to really inform the sorts of topics that get covered, and the technologies that we think about, for example. So that's sort of my description of the strategic marketing program. But I think it's an important thing that leaders and aspiring leaders should do from time to time, is to take a step back, to think about where things are headed and come up with an articulate response and strategy for grappling with that change and the challenges that lie ahead. So, like I said, lots of different types of people come on this program. And here's just a sampling of job titles and the sorts of organizations. It's very global. People from all around the world come to Oxford for this and have that great Oxford experience. So, thanks for listening to that. And if you want some more information, you can contact Zinzi Cresswell when the details are there on the screen, and you'll receive an email from her also as a follow-up to this webinar. So that you can get more information about anything that I've talked about today and follow up with some questions. But with that, I'm going to stop me talking and turn over now to taking some of your questions, because I know they've been coming in, and I promised a lively Q&A. So let's kick that off. So let's see, where shall we begin? So, okay, so here's a question from Jason. So he says, business units like to drive their own strategy and see marketing as a sales, support, and product launch department. How can marketing change this perception to become a strategic advisor to the organization? Fantastic question. Thanks for asking that. It's the perennial challenge, I think, for marketing is, in some sense, this, how does marketing actually have a bigger impact on organizations because of this type of view, whether marketing is there to just help sales, or it's just about getting products launched and communicating that, and then it goes on to everyone else. So I think there's an important way to think about this, and this is what I was telling our MBA students here at Oxford exactly this last week, is that there's a difference between sort of the marketing on the org chart and what I would call a marketing mindset. And I think marketing isn't something that just one organization within a firm owns, or just the CMO owns. I think marketing is about customers. Marketing is about identifying ways to grow revenue through serving customers better, with better products, with better services, with more products, with more services, whatever it might be. But fundamentally, marketing as a sort of at a more philosophical level is about growth. And so I think that's the way to open it up within the organization from a more strategic standpoint. Is, I think it'd be hard to have a conversation with, say, a COO, and if you ask them, do you care about growth? Do you care about customers? Are these things important to you? I think you'd be hard pressed to find someone who said, no, I don't care about those things. I just want to make things run more efficiently. I think they have an efficiency imperative, but they're also going to care about those things, and they're marketing. So infusing this mindset throughout the organization has to happen. And I think the most successful organizations and brands in the world have done that very successfully. Doesn't matter if you're working in the factory, or you're a data analyst, in the back office, or you're a salesperson, or you're a branding person, or whoever you are. If you don't care about your customers and the end users of whatever it is you bring to market, then I think you're not aligned with what the firm should be doing. So that's a tricky conversation that has to come from on top, but it also can bubble up from underneath in a bottom-up approach. So thank you, Jason, for that question. Another question comes from Russell. So we talk about a disruptive marketing environment. Is there any evidence that marketing is more disruptive than it used to be? Yeah, interesting question. So I think, I do think that we have a disruptive marketing environment, perhaps more so than in the past, because there are more demands on people's time. So there are more media channels, if we want to sort of think about it that way. There's just more things that more places for people to be advertised at, or places for people to get content, and really more places where people can spend their time. And we see an expansion of that in the digital space, of course. Not to say that the physical world is unimportant. I actually think it's as important as ever, if not more. But I do think that there's disruption taking place because of the proliferation of the media landscape. That's one thing. I think another thing is that consumers' behaviors are shifting. So how they search for products, get information, these sorts of things have been changing. So it's not just about being exposed to traditional marketing communications. Social influencers have always played a role, so word of mouth has always mattered, but I think it can be even more important now because we can have word of mouth at scale due to social media, for instance. So I think these are disruptive forces that change the way people behave, and therefore give marketers reason to think about doing things differently. So I would say that's true, but the disruptive nature of marketing has always been there because there's always technological advances that open up new platforms or new technologies and new ways for consumers to be reached. So when TV was invented and came to the masses, that was a disruption. But we keep on seeing these things. The other thing, I think it's accelerating. So we see more disruption now due to rapid technological changes than perhaps we did before. So we see leaps forward. We've always seen leaps forward, but I think we're seeing more leaps forward in a given period of time than we have in the past. So I think that's a challenge for marketers to figure out. Okay, another question. Thanks for that one. So this comes from AJ. So in terms of the future of marketing, I'm interested in your views on the line between B2B marketing versus B2C marketing. Do you feel this line will blur to the point where it is no longer visible? Or do you think they will remain two distinct disciplines that require very different marketing approaches? So I wrote an article in Forbes about a year or so ago called Let's Challenge the False Dichotomies of Marketing. And one of the false dichotomies of marketing that I called out then was this B2B versus B2C distinction. My view has often been and continues to be that there's a lot more in common between B2B and B2C than there are differences. Indeed, there are different sort of tactical approaches you would consider, different media channels you would probably consider. So how you allocate a budget at the sort of the fine-grained level would be different. But if you sort of zoom out a little bit and realize that at the end of the day, people making decisions to purchase something from an organization, whether they're an institutional buyer in a B2B sense or an end consumer in a B2C sense, at the end of the day, they're people, and they're influenced and persuaded in largely the same ways. They react emotionally to information or brands or reputations in similar ways. So I think because people are at the heart of all of this, B2B and B2C tend to be pretty aligned. What I would say also from a tactical level is if you think about digital and digital advertising in particular, I think tools that work well in B2C, so precisely targeted ads on Facebook, for example, also tend to work pretty well in B2B because we can now more precisely target, maybe sometimes even down to the level of the IP address of someone in a certain organization that you might be trying to sell a service to. So I think the playbook is pretty much in alignment between these two approaches, although there's always going to be differences, but like I said, more commonalities than not. Thanks for that. Another question, this one comes from Darren. So he asks, is there a guide or indicator how much an organization should invest in marketing activity, for example, as a percentage of turnover? There are some rules of thumb out there which you can look into, and you can look at sort of industry statistics. The problem with that, though, is how marketing gets accounted. So if investing in marketing or marketing investments are measured simply in how much you spend on things like advertising, that's probably underestimating or undervaluing marketing activities. So therefore, as a percentage of turnover, that would be lower than maybe you need to think about. So you can look at some organizations and guides for that. But I think that the question that's actually maybe a more important one is, define what you mean by marketing activity. And I think that's something every organization needs to think about, and take a broader approach to that, because then that can help guide broader investments and help get buy-in from other budget holders or power centers in an organization who might want to invest in developing the same things, even though they might not have thought of it as a marketing thing. It would help them in some other ways. So, investing in customer data, for example, investing in analytics capabilities, that has ramifications across the board, not just marketing. And from an accounting standpoint, you probably wouldn't book it as marketing per se. Although we do know that CMOs tend to be outspending CIOs or CTOs these days when it comes to technology spend because of things like analytics. But investing in customer data and analytics capabilities helps marketers do a better job of serving and understanding their customers, but it also helps with operational efficiency and many other things. So look for investments that have multiple benefits as well, and that sort of ties back to the earlier question about sort of marketing in a silo versus marketing more broadly across the organization. So thank you for that question. Another question. So this one's from Ahmed. If any company or brand does not focus on strategic marketing, then what benefits can they lose in the short run and also in the long term? So so sort of related to the previous question, but the flip side, if we pulled investment in strategic marketing activities, so if we didn't invest in, for example, building a strong brand or a strong reputation and sense of purpose in the marketplace for an organization, or if we didn't invest in our customers and serving them well with products that they find valuable, then basically business would go away. I fundamentally believe that you can't have a business without customers. I don't think that's a controversial point. And so if you sort of remove investment from those sorts of things like customer asset development, then you're going to hurt your ability to grow. You're going to, demand growth is going to slow. And then that's probably putting it conservatively. So I think really figuring out, and this is to the previous question as well, what the investment should be, sort of the breadth and the nature of those investments, getting buy-in around those investments is important, but strategically, this is what keeps the lights on. You have to keep investing in these marketing type assets to really grow a business. So another question. So with all the pressures on the bottom line, it's often hard to convince senior leaders of the need to inculate future perspectives on marketing. Do you have some examples of where this has worked and why? So thanks. So I think thinking about the future of any industry or any business discipline or practice is vital because business moves forward at a rapid pace. So investing in your people, therefore, is really, really important because it's the people who are going to figure out the challenges and figure out how to turn those challenges into opportunities, or in other words, solve the problems. So I think organizations that have invested in marketing talent development have been doing really, really well. So a concrete example is L'Oreal. So I'm sure L'Oreal is known to everyone, but it's the world's largest beauty company, about 40 or so different brands, many of which are household names. Global organization, very marketing-driven organization for over a century. But they realized probably about 3-4 years ago that the old school ways of marketing don't perfectly hold true anymore. Their customer has changed. The customer wants more technology. They want to be more digital. They want to access the brand in more digital ways. And so this is an organization that around the world has undergone a massive digital transformation. They brought in at the board level, the executive leadership level, a chief digital officer who embarked on a digital transformation initiative that is ongoing. But really, where they began and where they keep investing is not in necessarily, investing in more software or analytics tools or capabilities, which I'm sure they're doing, but they invested in their people. They realized that they needed digital experts within their businesses, but they also needed everyone in the organization, every marketer, everyone who has any role to play in their brands. They needed to understand the future of marketing. So they've undergone a massive global talent development and upskilling initiative, which has brought people up to speed and helped them advance their careers as well at a personal level by being more digital savvy and becoming more expert in new forms of marketing, which are aligned with what consumers want and where brands are headed. So I think, and this has fueled a lot of growth. And it's a company that is doing extremely well, and I would attribute a lot of that success to this approach. But it started from inside. So I think to really enable a future-oriented view, you need to give people at all levels of the organization the time and the space to learn new things and to then apply those learnings into their own businesses and their own jobs. I think that's absolutely essential, and it doesn't require deep pockets to do either. You could do it at a global scale, but you could also do it at the scale of just you, and that would add value. Another question, and this might be, maybe we'll take this question and one more and then wrap up the webinar. So this question comes from Annabelle. So AI appears to be one of the next big things on the horizon. For an SME with a small marketing team, it's easy to be overwhelmed by the amount of information and hype out there. Where's a good place to start getting involved? Yeah, great question. So yeah, AI, I think maybe it's an understatement to say there's hype around this. I a few weeks ago was in Las Vegas at the Consumer Electronics Show to kind of see what all the new latest and greatest things are, and AI was the buzzword, and AI, voice-powered AI assistants in particular. So Alexa everywhere, that kind of stuff was really a big thing in terms of electronics and devices. I think for smaller organizations, for SMEs, it's really even more important to not get caught up in the hype. Because you just don't have as much slack as a large organization would have to kind of explore some of these things without really knowing where the value is going to lie, or where the light at the end of the tunnel is, so to speak. So where to start, I think, is to set the hype aside and learn what it actually means. So what is AI? How does it apply to marketing? What are the applications of AI in marketing at the moment? Who offers those tools? The Googles, the Facebooks, etc. of the world. Well, what is it that's AI about what they do? And if you're spending money with those sorts of platforms, well, how much of your money is being spent on AI-related advertising, for example? So figuring out what's going on at the moment. And this is a fast-changing place, so thinking about where it's headed is going to be important too. So there's that sort of audit or taking stock, identifying the good use cases, and some will apply to your business and some won't. But I think you need to know where this has worked in order to have a sense of where you would then sort of invest. So in other words, you need to assemble the menu of options before you can choose from that menu. And that's really, really hard because things get overhyped. So I think something that's more driven by research, by taking a step back and looking at things in a more independent manner is important. And in fact, frankly, that as a business school, as an academic institution, we see that as in part our role to be an independent critic of what's going on in industry. So that's something that we spend a lot of time on, is trying to cut through the hype around things like AI, so that business people can actually understand where the value might potentially lie. So I think within your space, identifying, well, a good starting point is really identifying use cases, and then going from there and focusing on how these things have actually played out, in terms of case studies, as opposed to, just it sounds exciting, but who knows what that actually means. So I think that would be a place to begin. One more question I think we'll do. So the question is, what do you think is the most important issue to be aware of as a marketing leader? So is it things like change management, digital disruptors, managing teams? Is it sort of the perennial issue of ROI? Excuse me. I think it's hard to pick one. It's going to be a combination. I think as a marketing leader, and this is for current leaders as well as the next gen of leaders, I suppose, sort of the aspirant, up and coming marketing leader. You need to be aware of the shifting landscape. You need to have a broad understanding of what is taking place, not only in your industry, but in related industries. And this gets back to the point I made earlier about expectation spillovers. Factors that could change your business model, or could change the way customers view you, or the way that customers want to be engaging with you, can come from expectations formed in completely different industries, because those customers interact with lots of different companies. So you need to know the landscape, and that's going to involve a lot of breadth. But I think the other imperative for a marketing leader is to really know the depth in their space, but on new things. And so the previous question around AI is a good example. Knowing what that means for your business, and to help your teams also understand that, so that people are on the same page and there's a common view and perspective, is necessary. It's not sufficient for getting you to the point of extracting value from that new technology or new channel or new platform or whatever it might be. But if you can't get you and your team to understand it, to cut through the hype, and to be aligned, then you've got no chance of actually experimenting with something, or testing and learning and pulling it off in any conceivably positive way. So I think the imperative for a marketing leader is to know the space, and to work with their colleagues, their teammates, to collectively understand that space, and then to drive things forward from that point. So it's very much a strategic alignment exercise. It's very much about orchestrating and leading, but it's also about knowing the marketplace and what's going on out there, and getting as much information and provocation as you possibly can. I think that's the responsibility of marketing leaders, and I think an increasingly important responsibility moving forward. So I think with that, we're pretty much on time. So we'll wrap up the webinar. Just want to say thank you for being part of it. Thank you for the questions. We got to a lot of them, but certainly there were some questions that were asked that we didn't get a chance to answer. So we apologize for not having time today to get to everyone. But thank you for that level of engagement. Hopefully you found some things interesting. I kind of hope you actually disagreed with some stuff too, because there's debate is healthy in this space. But I hope regardless, that this provokes some thought and has got you thinking about things that you might do next in your own journey and career path in what I think is a really interesting space to be in at the moment. So thank you again, and good afternoon from Oxford.